I don't know if that's better or worse than the first service, because the first service didn't work at all. Maybe it was better. Oh, man. But good morning, everybody. It's awesome to see you guys here, and it looks like we may have to go to 3 services, but that'll be okay. I'll be fine with that. That'll be awesome. We are in the middle of, actually nearing the end of a series called Invincible Marriage, and all of our services have been online or on Facebook, and you can go back and listen to those or watch them. I've probably had more response out of this series than I think any series I've done, and I understand why, because marriage hits us right at home, right where we live, the closest, the people we live closest to, and it really affects us the most. When I said it in the first service, I've said it before, when you have a good marriage, it's the greatest thing in the world. If your marriage is great, it's awesome. It's really nothing better. But if you have a really bad marriage, there's nothing worse than a really bad marriage. And so it's one or the other, and we can kind of tolerate a mediocre marriage for a while, but eventually, if we don't do something, it's just going to get worse. And I want you to have great relationships. I want you to have great marriages. Because I really believe, honestly, I truly, truly believe this. I know it sounds like something the preacher would say, but I truly believe as good as our marriages are, that's how good our church is going to be. And as good as our marriages and our churches are, that's how good our community is going to be. And it's all going to go hand in hand, and that's how good our schools are going to be, and it's how good our government's going to be. And it really does revolve around our closest relationships, which is with our spouses typically. And in America, we have abandoned marriage, honestly. One of the stats that I used early on in the series, and I'm actually thinking we may take this series and put it together in a set of DVDs or possibly CDs and make them available to people, because I think it's that important. If you couldn't come and you're not here, it doesn't matter. It's not about this church. I don't care I do, but I don't. It's like people don't have to come here to get the message that we want to share with people. And so I want you to invite people, but you point them towards the Facebook page or the website or YouTube or whatever, and just say, man, this really helped me. You ought to watch it. And if they never pay a penny or donate a penny or come to church, that'll be okay. If it helps the kingdom of God, that's all that matters. And that's what we're about. That's what this church is about. So we're thinking about that, but it's just so critical that you do that. And here's the great thing. You can have an awesome marriage. It's up to you to have a great marriage or not. And you can decide, and you can say, well, my marriage is good enough, and if that's good enough for you, fine. But if it's not, you can make a change. You can decide, I want my marriage to be better, and I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to make my marriage better. And when you have that attitude, that's a great start. And when your spouse has the same attitude, man, I'm telling you, God can do miracles. And He has in our marriage. Well, today we're talking about my daddy can whip your daddy. Anybody ever said that to a kid in school? My daddy can whip your daddy. Well, I got a daddy that can whip all y'all's daddies. His name is Jesus. And He can definitely whip your daddy, unless your daddy is Jesus too, and then that'd be a little weird. But anyway, I'm just glad you guys are here, and I do hope you'll fill out that card, take it to guest services. We've got a cool gift for you. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going to find a better church in town. You might find a bigger church. You might find a louder church. You might find churches that do some different things, but I don't think you're going to find a more loving church than this place. So today we're going to talk a little bit about parenting and in-laws and that kind of stuff. But we got to realize where we are first of all. We're all broken people. We're all broken people, honestly. And Oscar Wilde, famous author, said this: we are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. That all of us are in a place, typically, maybe you're not necessarily right now at this moment, but at times in our life, we're in a place where we're in a gutter. And we have a choice to either look at our surroundings and go, man, isn't this bad? And this is the most horrible thing. And how could God let me get in this place? But we also have the option to look up at the stars and say, how beautiful that is. Man, it was just like the other night after all the rain quit, and I went out and it was getting colder, I don't like that, but it was getting colder. And I looked up and the stars it was just clear sky. And it was just beautiful. So you can choose to look at the positive things or not. But I want to talk about parents and in-laws real quick. 4 principles I want to share with you about parents and in-laws, and you're either one of those or will be or have some one day. And there's some things that we need to know when it pertains to marriage. The first one is that you're to honor, not obey. Now, before you get married, if you're a kid, if you're a teenager, if you're a young person or young adult or whatever, and you're still living at home, you are required to obey your parents. Sometimes we do that, sometimes not so much, right? And when we don't, things kind of go crazy and don't go so good, right? Anybody got a kid that's not obeying? Don't raise your hand or say amen in that, but it's just the way it is. It's not always great. But once you get married, you're not required to obey your parents anymore. I would say you shouldn't. And I know that sounds kind of weird, and for some of you parents, I know you're not going to like that because and I think my kids are always my kids and they should always obey me. That's really not what the Scripture teaches, but we are to honor our parents at all ages. It doesn't matter. If you've been married out of the house for a long time, you should be honoring your parents. But you're not required to obey them. Now, here's the thing. If they're giving you money to pay bills and do stuff like that, there's some accountability there that you've opened yourself up to that maybe is a little bit different. But if you're not taking money from them, you're not required to obey them. Mark chapter 7, these are the religious people. Jesus said to them, if you say a man tells his father or mother, whatever you have gained from me is Corban, that is a gift given to God. What these religious guys would do, they would say, okay, all my stuff, my house, my money, my wealth, my whatever I have, I'm going to devote it to God. It's all devoted to God. And in the legal sense, that meant they could not use it for any other purpose but for God or their own benefit as they served God. These were the religious leaders of the time, okay? Understand the context of that. And so then their parents would get older and be poor health or living in a bad situation and need help. But these religious guys would say, well, Mom, Dad, I know, things are tough. I would love to help you. But see, all of my stuff, I've devoted it to God. And so I can't help you. Sorry, my hands are tied. Wish I could help you, but can't do it. And Jesus said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. To say that all your stuff's devoted to God and you're not going to help your parents, that's not honoring them. And so you should honor your parents. And we don't want to be those kind of people, The second principle is separation. You have to leave to cleave. You have to leave to cleave. Genesis 2 says that the two will become one flesh. You will leave your father and mother and cleave to the one. That means to pursue them with zealous passion and devote yourself to them. That you have to separate yourself, hopefully in geographical ways. At least, you're not living with them anymore. But even emotionally and spiritually, in a sense that you separate from your parents and you cleave to that spouse becomes the one thing that's more important to your parents then, and God, of course, that you have to separate from that. The third thing is protection, that you protect your spouse from your parents. For the biological parents, this is a big thing, especially for young couples that are getting married. But some of you possibly, I know in a room this size, as many people as we have in here, there are bound to be a relationship or two that the parents are still kind of controlling what's going on in your house, aren't they? And you don't have to say yes or amen to that. But that thing can still happen, that you have to, as the biological child, you have to go to your parents and say, look, Mom, Dad, we're married now. You can't just come show up at the house. It's probably wise if you don't. Anybody following me? We're a newly married couple. We like to do things newly married couples do, and you just need to call before you come. You just need to make sure everything's all right before you show up. It's a good place for the biological child to do that. And you have to protect your spouse from your parents sometimes. We had that happen early on, and when we're a blended family. Dawn and I were both married before. I went through a divorce. Her first husband committed suicide, and I wasn't a Christian by no means in those days. And we got married and trying to do things the right way and prioritize our family. And there were, I remember one instance in particular where, dads, we sometimes aggravate our sons, don't we? We can frustrate our sons a little bit, can't we? Nobody's willing to admit that. All right, I'll admit it. I was really bad at frustrating my sons, and I wanted them to toe the line. I wanted them to be a certain way, and then when they weren't, it was like we butted heads, man. Especially when they got to teenage years. If you're not teenage boys yet, look out. But it's coming. But we would just butt heads, and I can remember something. I don't even remember what the instance was, but boys were playing down on the lower driveway of the house, riding skateboards or rollerblades. I think it was rollerblades back in that day. And something happened, and our oldest son got mad at me and Donna's dad was there, and he ran upstairs and blah, 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 blah. Mark's doing this, Mark's doing that. And Donna's dad came downstairs and just jumped all over me at our house for disciplining my son. And I'll just tell you, that didn't go over so well. And so a little bit later, Donna and I had a conversation. I'm like, this ain't going to happen again. It's my house. I'm raising these boys. I respect him, I honor him, but that's not going to happen. So she had to have a conversation with him. Don't do that anymore, Daddy. Don't do that anymore. And he never did. And he actually, a couple days later, came back and apologized to me and said I shouldn't have done it. So it works. I'm just saying, it works. So the next thing is, fourth thing is friendship. What would you allow your friends to do? Really good friends. See, that's the greatest relationship with parents and in-laws, is to have a relationship that you're just really, really good friends. You want to be together. You don't feel guilty. It's not like you feel obliged to go spend time with them. You want to be with them. And we feel like we have that relationship with our kids now. And with our in-laws, Donna's mom and dad, we feel like we have that relationship with them now. And it's great that you're just really good friends. But what would you allow your friends to do in your home? Would you allow them to come in and rearrange the furniture? Would you allow them to come in and just totally change things in your home and take your kids and have their hair cut or do whatever they wanted to do? And you wouldn't do that if you were just good friends. You wouldn't even think about going to your friend's house and rearranging their furniture. You wouldn't even consider it. And your friends sure wouldn't let you do it. Well, you shouldn't let your parents do that either. I'm just saying, these are principles that are really, really good. You've got to understand, the other thing is that if your parents don't have a fulfilling marriage, you're not going to be able to help them. They're going to drain you, and it's not going to help them. You've got to focus on your marriage. They've got to focus on their marriage. And listen, you may have a parent that is widowed. Maybe one's living, one's not. There's got to be some things. Help them find some things to get involved with that they can have a fulfilling life and not chase you around. It just doesn't work, right? It just doesn't work. So that's really important that you do that. A couple other things I want to share with you. Don't ever use your parents as marriage counselors. Don't ever do that. It's just not good. And don't ever dishonor your spouse to your parents. It never works. It becomes adversarial. You've got to protect your spouse from your parents. And you just have to lovingly put parameters on that relationship. I want to talk about this in parenting too, and thinking how we kind of change gears a little bit here. But be positive. Show your parents and your in-laws some grace. I know it can be hard sometimes, and you don't want people getting in your business and whatever. But your parents have a story too. Your in-laws have a story. Possibly a lot of damage in their life, in their history. Give them some grace. You can put parameters, but do it lovingly. Look, Mom, Dad, we love you. We want you to have a great life. But we've got, this is a sovereign unit. I remember when our kids were young, they were playing ball all the time. They were playing baseball and softball. We were on the go all the time. And we were expected to go to the family farm on Sundays for lunch every Sunday. And it was like, we just can't do this. We can't do it. And Donna had to call her mom and say, look, we cannot do this anymore. We've got a life of our own. Our kids are busy. We're pouring into them. We're trying to do things the right way. We just can't make it sometimes. And she got upset, honestly. She pouted for a couple of weeks and wouldn't talk for a couple of weeks. But after a couple of weeks, we stood firm on our boundaries, and she understood, okay, this is the new thing. This is the way it's going to be. So from then on, it was just like she just called and invite. Hey, we're going to get together if you guys want to come be a part of it, and if you can, great. If you can't, it's fine too. And it was just great. It works. I'm just telling you. But C.J. Mahaney, who is a pastor in Maryland, made this statement. We can be thankful for our fellow sinners when we spend more time looking for evidences of grace than we do finding fault. That, man, we can decide, like looking at the stars, we can look for evidences of grace in the people that we're around, or we can find fault in everybody we see. And it goes much better if you just start looking for evidence of grace in every human being. And you know what? There's evidence of grace in everybody you know. And the life of just negativity and looking for something wrong in everything, in every situation, in every person will just wear you out. It will run you down, and it won't help them one little bit. It won't make them change. It will just just pull you down. So look for those evidences of grace. I want to talk about parenting and share some points with you about parenting. First point is marriage precedes children in priority. Marriage precedes children in priority. And we know that. We talked about this earlier in one of the messages earlier in the series. But when you get married, you have to reprioritize your relationships. And maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But here's the order. Here's the order that God would say. God comes first. Now that's your personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It's not church, okay? It's not even church for me. And I've made this statement before. If this church ever caused problems between Donna and I, if there's something about the church that's causing us a marriage problem, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to go to the elders and say, look, we need some time off because we got to reprioritize our relationship. That's God's order. But your personal relationship with Jesus Christ must be number one. Must be. If there's any other order, it's not going to work. One of God's name is jealous with a capital J. In Exodus 34, God says, I'm a jealous God with a capital J. One of my names is jealous. And anything that you put before God, He's going to become adversarial against that thing. A spouse, a child, a job, a ministry, a church, whatever. It doesn't matter. If I ever put this church before my relationship with Jesus, and it is possible. You say, well, you're a pastor. How can you? That doesn't make sense. I'm telling you, it's two different things. Jesus is a person. Church is the body of people together. It's not even this building, really. But if I ever put this church before Jesus, it's going to be bad. And you'll know it, because it won't be good. And it'll be wrong with us, too. But I can't put her before Jesus either. Jesus has to be number one, and then Donna's got to be number two for me. Your spouse, one day if you get married, your spouse must be number two, but Jesus has to be number one, always. And this is not temporary. This is not just until you get married and have kids. From now on, Jesus must be number one. Has to be. And then your spouse, and then your children. Listen, children are a temporary assignment anyway. I remember when our kids were little, and little as some of your guys are, and we're going to have baptisms today, a bunch of kids getting baptized. And I remember when our kids were so little, and it was just like, man, these little people, they drive me crazy. They're so sneaky, and they eat a lot, and they complain a lot, and they, all this stuff. And it's like, man, they're so little. And now they're 30-something years old, and I'm going, where did the time go? It's temporary. It's temporary. Now we have 4 grandkids. It's like, what happened? What happened to that time, right? Some of you guys know what I'm talking about. It's temporary assignment. But you got to understand that. Marriage precedes children in priority. And it's the same for a blended family. I just got to say that. It doesn't matter if this is your second or third or fourth or fifth marriage and you have a blended family and you have yours, his, and ours and whatever. It doesn't matter. The principle is the same. Marriage must precede children in priority. I want to give you a few points that will help you with this. I heard people say nothing is important as my children. That sounds really good, but that's not true at all. There are 2 things more important than your children. That's God and that's your marriage. And there's some things that you need to be aware of to keep this priority in place. The relationship with God and our spouse is the basis. That's the basis of the marriage, that the marriage must be the nucleus of the home. The marriage doesn't revolve around the children revolve around the marriage. It's got to be that way, and it's got to stay that way forever and ever and ever. Amen. The second thing is you need to establish healthy disciplines and traditions like a date night or a family night. Maybe you'd say, well, we don't have any time. You've got to do this. You've got to find time. If it's not once a week, it's every other week or at least once a month. I mean, at the very minimum, I'd say at least once a month. You've got to find some time, budget it, plan for it, plan ahead, do whatever it takes to make that happen. And have family nights with the kids where you play games or, do whatever. When it's getting warmer now, so you can go outside and play or go on walks or whatever. Do a family time together. Disciplines are really important. And then the third thing is budgeting your time and your money or your energy, like your money. Listen, we all understand a financial budget, that we can't spend more than we have. The government doesn't understand it, but we understand it, that you can't spend more money than you really have in your account or that you make. Well, your time's the same way. You get 24 hours a day just like me. That's it. Some of that time you got to sleep. Some of it you got to work. Some of it you got to eat. Some of it, there's things that you have to do. But it's all the other time. I bet you if you sat down and scheduled and said, okay, here's the time that I need to sleep, 6 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, whatever it is. For teenagers, it's 16 hours. Work is 8 hours, but it takes me 2 hours to get there, so there's 10 hours of my day. I'm just kidding. Teenagers, don't get mad at it. I know, it's only 9. We got to eat, Eating is, hour a day, a couple hours a day, maybe 15 minutes for me. 'Cause I eat fast. Whatever it is, the things that you have to do, and look how much time you have left over. Just look at it. Just do it. I challenge you to do that. Look and see how much time you have left over with things that don't have to happen. I bet you'd be amazed. And then you say, well, I don't have time to read the Bible. Some of you are going, well, I don't want to do that exercise because I know I'll find out I got a lot of time. Yeah, you do, but you got to budget your time. You got to budget your time. You got to do it just like you would money. And again, here's the thing. You got to protect higher priorities from lower ones. Listen, I used to love to play golf and softball. There's nothing wrong with golf and softball. There's nothing wrong with hunting and fishing. There's nothing wrong with, whatever you like to do, riding in a Jeep or a motorcycle or whatever it is, shopping. There's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. But you need to protect your higher priorities, which is your relationship with Jesus and your spouse and your children, from lower ones. Your relationship with your spouse is a higher priority than your children. That doesn't mean your children don't need you. And certainly when they're little, they need you even more. I understand that. But how will your children succeed if you don't show them? Parenting is more caught than taught. You can talk all you want, but they're going to pay attention to how you act and what you do. And it's not how your mother treated your father or your father treated your mother. Some of you might have grown up in great homes where the marriages were great, but many of us grew up in homes where it was either non-existent or it was terrible. And we don't want to model that. So you don't model it by that. You model it by what Jesus says and what God says. And you've got to teach your children how to succeed. And nobody's the exception. And if you give up your marriage or your children for your marriage, it's just going to cause resentment. There was times in our life when, for Donna and I both, we felt like we put the children above each other, and you know what happened? We both got resentful. I felt like the kids were more important to her. She felt like the kids were more important to me, and she thought golf and all that stuff was more important than she was. And you know what? She was right, because I proved it by my actions. I said she was more important, but the way I proved it by my actions, golf was more important. Fishing was more important. All that stuff, it was more important. Work was even more important, but you can't do it. I've known people that will do anything for their children. They'll leave work early, take their kids to the doctor. Kids get sick, take them to the ER, do whatever it takes for their kids, but will not do the same for their spouse. That's wrong. I know you may not like it, but I'm telling you, I have to tell you, it's wrong. Awful. And I've made that mistake. You can't do it. It tells your spouse that the kids are more important. It doesn't matter what you say. You got to be aware of that. Got quiet in here. Let's move on. The second point of parenting is that unity is essential. It's really, really important. Mark chapter 3, verse 25 says, if a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. Amos 3:3, do two walk together unless they've agreed to do so? No, you can't. It's not possible. We use those scriptures when it comes to budgeting finances, but it's true with everything we do. We've got to walk together. We've got to speak the same language. It's important that we are together. And I'm going to give you some essential practices for unity. Always present a united front to your children. Our children used to hear this from when we learned it, finally started doing it, that we're a two-headed monster. Whatever mom says, dad's going to say. Whatever dad says, mom's going to say. Now, if we don't agree, we're going to go to the bedroom behind closed doors and we're going to negotiate. We're going to talk about it. But our kids will never hear a difference between us publicly. We did that all wrong. For the longest time, the kids played us against each other because they knew how to do it, and we let them do it. And let me tell you something. If your kids are doing that, you're letting them do it. You can stop it. You get behind closed doors and you decide, here's how we're going to parent together. These are the issues that we have coming up. How are we going to handle this with our kids? And you do it together. And when you come out of that door, all they see is that two-headed monster, mom and dad. And they're saying the same thing. And it's never going to be played against the other. I'm telling you, you got to do it. Second thing is always honor each other in front of your children and make them honor your spouse. Again, blended family is no exception. When we got married and our boys started getting older, especially our oldest one, and he was, he thought he was the man of the house. He was told early on he was the man of the house. When Donna's first husband committed suicide, somebody went and told him he was the man of the house now. That stuck in his little brain and his heart. He said, I'm the man of the house and no man's going to take my place. And then I came along. And it was like that. It was tough. And when he started disrespecting his mom, I'm like, you're not going to do that. I don't let anybody do that. Now, I did it for a long time, but once God got a hold of me and I started treating her the way she needed to be treated, I'm like, no man is going to treat my wife that way. Right? Men, I want to challenge you. You stand up. You stand up for your wife. To anyone, man, woman, child, boss, pastor, son, daughter, anybody. Nobody treats her that way. You treat her that way, man, you're going to have a problem. Now, I'm a pastor, and I believe in forgiving, but I also believe in laying on of hands. I'm just saying, I'll pray for you while I choke you. I'm just joking a little bit, kind of, sort of. But I still have a sword in my office, and I can use it. I'm just being funny, y'all. Listen, I'm just saying. I know behind every good man is a woman rolling her eyes, right? I get it. But that's my job, to protect her against anything that would come against her or anyone, including my son. You're not going to talk to your mama that way. Wives, you need to do that for your husbands. What greater way to show your husband's honor than to say, listen, you're not going to talk to your daddy that way. You're not going to treat him that way. I don't treat him that way. You're not going to treat him that way. It's not going to happen. Man, can you imagine the unity that brings when you treat your spouse with that kind of respect? Third thing is never allow a significant difference to develop in how you express love or enforce discipline. I heard this statement before, that the emotional and sexual development is dependent on both parents affirming and discipline. Both of you need to affirm and both of you need to discipline. And listen, in a blended home, it's always wise that the biological parent do the discipline, especially from the beginning. It's always wise to do that. But that non-biological parent must know that they have ownership of those children and can speak into the discipline and the life of those children. They must know, and the children must respect that. It has to be that way. There's no options. Because if not, the children will never respect them. And it will ruin your marriage and it will ruin your home. I'm just telling you from experience, you've got to do it that way. Fourth thing is go outside of your marriage for counseling when you come to an impasse. There's times when you just are too close emotionally to solve an issue that's going on in your home. It's just too hard. You're too close emotionally. You got to go outside of your marriage, and don't be ashamed to do that. Listen, getting counseling is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. I thank God that we had a good friend that recommended a godly counselor for Donna and I when we were struggling so hard and we were in such bad shape. And listen, and at first, for men, let me speak for men. Women typically, not always, typically women will want to go to counseling before a man will. Most men will say, we don't need it. You need it. I don't need it. You need it. You go to counseling. You need it. If you've ever said that to your wife or prospective wife, you need to go. We both need it. We both needed it. I thank God that we went. That man poured into us and opened our eyes to see things that we would not have seen any other way. We would not have just absorbed it from reading the Scripture, I don't believe. I just don't think we would. I thank God for that man. He passed away about a month or so ago. I can't imagine the lives that man changed just by speaking truth into them. So go do that. You need to do that. The third principle is that parenting takes faith. Don't give up. Don't give up. Listen, maybe your children are driving you crazy right now. Listen, kids, maybe your parents are driving you insane right now. Don't give up on them. Keep praying for your parents, no matter how old they are, no matter how little of a clue they have in life itself. I know they don't have a brain cell. No parent has a brain cell until you hit about 21 or 22. Notice I said until you hit about 21 or 22. We're clueless. Pray for your parents. And kids and parents, you need to pray for your kids. I'm just going to tell you, your kids, sometimes they're this little, nowhere near thinking about boys or girls. I understand it. You need to be praying for their spouse right now. You need to be praying for your daughters. Men, you need to be praying for your daughters. Lord, send someday, when she's about 35, the man that you would have her to marry, right? I told my daughter she wouldn't even date till she was 30. Well, at 30, she had 2 kids. I didn't have a clue, right? Pray for your kids' spouses now. That God would raise up a godly man, a godly woman to come at the right time and support them and love them and be an example to them and provide for them. Pray for them now. I'm telling you, and pray specifically. Pray this kind of man, this kind of woman that has a job and a good job and has a calling on their life and has a mission to serve you, and you're number one. Pray specifically. Listen, I'm telling you, God can line up specifically and be preparing it right now that when that day comes, you'll go, that's exactly what we prayed for you. I'm telling you, men, you need to lead the way in this too. But you need to trust God. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And here's the thing. Training is showing. It's not just talking about it. You got to train somebody. If you've ever trained somebody how to do a job, you had to show them how to do it. You didn't just show up and say, hey, do it that way. Go do the job. You had to show them. You had to physically go to the machine or go to the desk or go through the papers or the computer or whatever you had to do to train them, to show them, here's how you do that. Here's how you do that. So I'll show you how to do it. I'm training you how to do it. That's how you do it as parents. You train them in the way they should go. And when they're old, the Word says they won't depart from it. They'll come back. Some of us are waiting on that day, aren't we? That they're going to come back. We've trained them. We've shown them. The day's coming when they're coming back. You all right? Y'all agree with that? Anybody receive that this morning? Amen. But you got to trust God. And here's the thing. Corey, if you guys want to kind of head up here. If you don't want your kids to be like you, there's something wrong. And this was the question the counselor asked me that really rocked my world. Mark, do you want your kids to be like you? And at that time, I did not. My whole thought was, Lord, no. I don't want them to be like me. I'm a mess. But you know what? You can become that person that you want your kids to be like. Here's the other thing. Do you want your kids to have a marriage like yours? Seriously, answer that question in your mind right now. Do you want your children to have the marriage that you have right now? Would you be okay if your kids grow up and have the marriage that you have right now? And if the answer is no, and that seems like bad news, I want you to understand something. You can change that. You can decide, okay, right now I don't want them to have the relationships we have. I don't want them to be like me. I don't want them to have a marriage like us. But you know what? Today we can decide that's going to change. We're going to start becoming the people that God wants us to be so that the day will come, maybe 6 months, maybe a year down the road, that I can say, yes, Lord, I want my kids to have the kind of marriage I have right now. Lord, I want my kids to be like me. Fathers, you want your sons to be like you. I'm telling you, and the day can come, maybe it is already, and that's praise God for that. But if not, you can say, I'm going to become the man that my kids can be like, and I'll be okay with that. But do you want your kids to have the relationship with Jesus that you have? Do you want the relationship that you personally, not your spouse, just you. I'm just talking to you right now. I'm not talking to your spouse. But I'm talking to each and every one of you. Do you want your kids to have the relationship with Jesus that you have right now? And if not, you can change that too. See, what the devil does, the devil does something that's called photographic thinking. Photographic thinking. Oh, Mike, you need to go. Sorry. I meant to tell you that before the service. The devil will do what's called as photographic thinking. You're in a mess right now. Your family's in a mess. And he'll take a picture of that moment right now, right where you are, with your kids, with your parents, and he'll say, you know what? This is the best it's ever going to be. Get ready. This is the way your life's going to be from now on. This is how your kid's going to be from now on. Right? is how your parents are going to be from now on. The situation, the mess that you're in, it's never going to get any better. This is the way it is. That's what the devil does to us. But God's way is prophetic thinking. That picture the devil showed you, you just need to throw that away. Because I got better plans. Listen, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and give you a hope and a future. Plan to raise your children up to be mighty men and women of God. I believe that your daughters are going to be prophets one day, and they're going to talk about the glory of God and the greatness of God and what they've done. Your sons are going to be raised up to be mighty men of God, strong in the Lord, and they're going to serve the Lord, and they're going to bring people to know Him. It doesn't matter what the devil showed us. Prophetically, we know that God's going to raise up a generation to brag on God, to proclaim the praises of God, that a revival will happen, and we're seeing it already, that mighty things, amazing things are going to happen. That's the way God talks, not the way the devil talks. And you got to get on board with what God says, not what the devil says. And I want to share this with you that I shared with a group of young ladies yesterday. After the fall, when Adam and Eve sinned and they had their eyes hadn't been opened, and God came to them in the garden, and He said to them, "Where are you?" Not because He'd lost them, by the way. What's going on? Where are you at right now? And what did Adam say? Adam said, "We hid because we were naked." And God said, "Who told you you were naked? Who told you? Who? Who told you you were naked?" See, the devil will make you be ashamed of what you've done. But God wants to forgive you. God wants to raise you up. Who told you? Who told you you were stupid? Who told you you were useless? Who told you you couldn't be forgiven? Who told you that lie that God could never use you? Who told you that your marriage would not make it? Who told you that your parents were never going to protect you? Who told you that your children would always be drug addicts and alcoholics? Who told you that? Because that wasn't God that said that. That was the devil that said that, and he's a liar. He knows nothing but lies. That's his native language, is to speak lies, and we just need to start calling him on it and saying, "Listen, no more am I going to listen to your lies. I'm going to start listening to the truth, the promise that God gave me, that God's going to raise up my family. He's going to heal them and restore them. He's going to bring back what the devil tried to tear apart. God's going to bring it back and restore it." You receive that today? I ask you to stand, and we're going to worship. And then we're going to go into our baptism time, and it's going to be just so awesome. Kids are going to come in. It's going to be crazy. But it's awesome. But Father, this morning we ask you, we thank you, first of all, Lord, for the word that you shared with us today. We thank you for your word, God. And it is your word. It's not ours. So, Father, we thank you that you allowed us to hear from your word today. And, God, don't let it just be hearing only. Let us be changed by it. God, I pray for parents today, husbands and wives, God, that we would have the courage to submit to you and your word for our lives. God, that we would become unified, that we would prioritize our relationship with you and with our spouses first, that we would model what a godly marriage looks to our children, because they will see it and they will want to be like it. God, that you'd bring us together. But God, most of all, if nothing else, God, that we would begin to trust you, that we would begin to follow you and put you first and know that you can do miracles that we've never thought could ever happen. And we thank you for that in the name of Jesus. Now let's worship. Well, I'm going to pray and let you guys go, but I had to say something. I hope you'll come back next week. We're going to wrap up this series with the reason we divorced. And it's the reason that most people divorce. I want to tell you it's avoidable. You can have an invincible marriage, and you can have an invincible family, but it comes by trusting and committing everything you have to Jesus Christ. And what a great picture we've seen of that today. Amen? Let's give God praise one more time. Awesome. God bless you guys. Sorry we kept you so late, but we'll see you next week. God bless you.